Chapter 781, Going Back to Xuanhuan. The first point was that he needed to set up heaven-earth formation after he went back to Xuanhuan, and the second point was that he would practice the heavenly demon skin every night. Given the vast amount of resources, he could sort of practicing heavenly demon skin successfully. As long as he succeeded and got the supernatural power, he could thus gain a foothold. And the third point was that it would take Dong Chen and his men some to practice their techniques. There are far more important things. Meng is about to go to school, and Xian and I have to hold a wedding, well, a grand wedding. It looks like we'll be quite busy lately. Dong Chen came over to say something and turned away. Zhang Han and Zhang Guangyu walked towards where Meng was. During this period, Zhang Han was pondering on these things in his mind. When they got close to them, Meng saw Zhang Guangyu and pouted her lips. Humphrey. Ouch, what's wrong, my granddaughter? Zhang Guangyu laughed at the situation and squatted down to hold Meng in his arms. To his surprise, Meng turned around and ran away a few steps before turning back with a face of displeasure. Grandpa, I don't like you at all now. Huh? Why? Zhang Guangyu was stunned. Zhang Han came to his senses upon hearing Meng's words and grinned. Xian and Rong Jiali also covered their mouths and laughed lightly as well. Zhang Guangyu took 2 steps forward and asked with amusement, "Why don't you like Grandpa anymore?" Meng said with a serious face, "Because, Grandpa, you are always looking for Papa, and I have to play with Papa. And I don't like it when you come and take Papa away from me. If anybody wanted to take her Papa away from her, she surely wouldn't agree. I didn't. Why should I take your Papa away from you? Then I will ask your Papa to play with you later, okay? Well, okay, finger promise." As Meng, who was easily coaxed, heard Zhang Guangyu say so, she stopped pouting and extended her little hand to make finger promise with her grandfather. Ha ha ha. Zhang Guangyu laughed cheerfully and stretched out his hand to make finger promise with Meng. Meng said earnestly, "Let's finger promise and neither of us should change our minds for 100 years. She looked up at Zhang Guangyu after finishing her words. "Grandpa, why didn't you say so?" "Ah, I forgot it. What about starting over?" "Yes. Let's finger promise and neither of us should change our minds for 100 years. This time, they both spoke at the same time. Thus, Meng didn't criticize her grandpa anymore. Whoa, ha ha ha. I was stunned at this scene and thought, it's a game for children. This old man is so childish. COO. I agree. Zhang Guangyu, who seemed to have sensed their thoughts, glared at them. There were a few more who were laughing in secret on the side. Meng, we're going home tomorrow, Zhang Han said with a smile. Oh, okay. Meng didn't care where she would play, with Papa, Mama, and Big Hi along with others. She could have fun. It was just that it's been a long time since they had been back to the big castle, and Meng missed it a bit. They kept having fun until the day turned dark. Rong Jiali went to prepare dinner, then they started to enjoy delicious food, while Dai and others enjoyed roasted meat in shreds. They were having such a happy life. In the night, after putting Xian and Meng to sleep, Zhang Han came to Heaven Lake once again. My feet are in pain all the time, which are going through the process of being ruined and reorganized over and over again. I didn't expect that the practicing of this skin layer is an integral process, making layering cultivation unviable. Zhang Han was absorbing energy while refining the cortex of his feet. Sizzle, and sounds kept emitting from his feet. If outsiders heard his words, they probably would think that Zhang Han's feet were like being roasted. It was just that the lingering qi and blood on his body as well as the strands of mysterious energy were imperceptible, and even Zhang Han had only felt a hint of it. I will stick to the plan. With so many resources, such as bipedal feet, legs, torso, arms, neck, head, I can practice heavenly demon skin successfully. Although the process is painful, that's how the path of refining the body is. If I want a strong body, I have to undergo great pain. I should be able to end the refinement of my feet tonight and start the refinement of my legs. Zhang Han's breath slowly subsided. As he was quickly absorbing energy and refining the foot skin, gradually, the foot skin formed shapes, and strands of energy began to spread over the legs. It was a slow process, which could take almost 2 days. At dawn, Zhang Han returned to his residence, carefully went to bed, and slept soundly with physical and mental exhaustion. He and Xian didn't get up until Meng Meng woke up. Xian stretched her waist and held Meng Meng's little hand to do the wash-up. Zhang Han got dressed and cleaned up all the bedding, and only after the two of them finished cleaning up did the three of them leave the room. At this time, Rong Jiali had gotten the breakfast prepared again, which made Zhang Han somewhat eager to do the cooking. He preferred to cook for Meng Meng, thinking that after he went back to Xiangjiang, he would have to cook by himself anyway. After they finished breakfast, it was almost 8 o'clock. Let's go, we're going home. Xian had missed the castle which belonged to the three of them for a long time, and she was very happy that she could go back there now. Meng Meng was even more uplifted. She used to dislike going out much before, but now she was particularly fond of traveling. Waving her two little arms, she ran on the ground happily. We are going home, Papa, Mama, you guys should hurry up. We are coming. Zhang Han laughed and quickly followed, leading the way with Meng Meng in front. At the backside, Rong Jiali, Rong Jiaxin, and Zhang Guangyu were chatting quietly, and by the time they arrived at the front gate, the yacht had been ready. Zhao Feng and others were all sitting up there, including Dong Chen, 3 elders, and other 3 peak heads. Seeing that it was almost time, Zhang Guangyu nodded his head and said, let's go. Hence, the yacht started, and after a short while, a token appeared in Dong Chen's hand and light dazzled around the yacht, triggering the heaven-earth formation. Then various waves of fluctuations flickered up, and the yacht slowly dissipated on the Huanshan River. When the yacht reappeared, everyone saw the same small lake. Papa, how did we get here so fast? Seeing the disembarkation, Meng Meng was a little confused. Hadn't it taken them a long time before they had arrived at the destination last time? It didn't take them long this time. Meng Meng wondered whether they were fooling her. Zhang Han laughed softly, because we had taken a long detour last time, and we took a shortcut this time. Okay. Meng Meng responded, and after getting off their yacht, there was a convoy of cars on the roadside ahead, which was not far away from them. They got into the cars and headed to Xuanhuan City, which was not far away, and the private jet was ready. They boarded the jet and the jet took off, which was a simple process. This was one of the benefits of having power. If you wanted to travel, someone surely would make the proper arrangements for you in advance. By noon, the plane slowly landed at the Meng Meng Group's airport. The third elder couldn't help but lament, it's getting so prosperous nowadays, there are all kinds of tall buildings. Dong Chen gave him a light glance. You haven't been out for more than 10 years, what a fuss. Your words sound that you always come out. We should have come out at about the same time, right? I was out a month or so before. How shameless of you to show off the 30 more days. Ha ha. Among the several elders, Dong Chen knew third elder earlier and spoke to him very casually. They were at the back of the plane and got off the plane with the crowd. Many people were picking them up, including Ziqiang, his men, and members of the security group. The security group was headed by Ahu, who had been having an intimate relationship with Liu Jiren and hadn't gone with them this time. It turned out, FCK, as Ahu shook hands with Zhao Feng, the latter purposely leaked aura and a little bit of pressure. As a result, Ahu regretted it so much. Ahu thought, what the hell? They went inside for a while. How come they all are at Grandmaster late stage? What on earth did I miss? In response, Instructor Liu pouted his mouth and smiled. Suddenly, there was an extra warhammer in his right hand. The hammer had a strong aura with its top side forming a curved tip that resembled an ivory shape, and at the bottom side, there was a huge hammer base that looked not only fierce but also very beautiful. Pa. Instructor Liu stretched out his hand, clapped it twice hard, and sighed lightly. Hey, the sacred artifact is just like this, there is nothing special about it, after all, everyone gets one. As he said, he retrieved the giant hammer. Whose eyes were going red. At this time, Zhao Feng stopped discouraging him, smiled, and said, only Instructor Liu has one, we don't have one yet. Seeing Instructor Liu's appearance, Zhang Wangyu felt that this treasure wasn't given away in vain. This security group is quite interesting, Zhang Wangyu said as he walked next to Dong Chen and others. Yes, it feels like they're all with great potentials as well. Third Elder nodded. It's quite impressive to have these forces in the world. Young master, you've given birth to a good son. He's better than you. Stop it, stop it, stop it, please don't say that. Zhang Wangyu felt that he had gotten a headache. It was fine for him to hear comments like this occasionally, however, he didn't feel so after hearing such comments this frequently. He felt a little sad as well as a little helpless. After getting into the car, Zhang Wangyu directly left them behind and went to the front to coax his granddaughter. After more than 10 minutes, they reached Mount New Moon. First Elder and Third Elder as well as the other 3 peak heads were all impressed by what they saw. Wu, Dai, Little Hai, and Tiny Tot were even more cheerful. However, they probably couldn't enjoy the delicious meat of those spirit beasts in the future. However, they felt quite comfortable while staying in their house. Dai and the others had taken here as where their house was. They were finally back here. In the evening, Zhang Han went to the dining hall ahead of time to prepare food, cooking a table of delicious food for Meng Meng, including tempting grilled pig's feet, steak meat, foie gras, mushrooms, and so on. They enjoyed the food with content, and when it was time to go to bed, the 3 of them went to the big bedroom on the 3rd floor. Meng Meng flopped on the big bed and rolled the pretty happily. Xian also plopped down beside her, relaxing all over and exclaiming, wow, our home is the most comfortable place. Meng Meng took the opportunity to say, yeah, our big bed is the most comfortable place, Mama, I don't want to sleep in a cot today. Okay, then you'll sleep in the big bed. Xian turned over and pinched Meng Meng's tiny nose. Okay. The 2 of them played on the bed, and soon, Zhang Han also took off his clothes and went to bed to have some fun. After that, they lay down in the bed and fell asleep slowly along with Zhang Han's bedtime story. In the early hours of the morning, when Xian and Meng Meng were both sleeping soundly, Zhang Han gently moved Xian's arms and long legs on his body to a different position. Then he got up and walked out of the castle through the window. Under the bright light in the evening, Thunder Yang Tree looked somewhat mysterious, and its surroundings seemed to be overflowing with a light veil, looking overwhelmingly beautiful. Chapter 782, Star and 5 Elements Formation. There were more than 10 people standing under the Thunder Yang Tree, with Dong Chen and Zhang Wangyu at the head. The others were Grand Elder, Third Elder, the other 3 peak heads, several masters with Wang Zanping included, Wang Ming, Chen Chenking, Zhao Feng, and a few others. The arrival of these people made Dai and the others have nowhere to sleep. They could only run to the dense forest of the back mountain to take a nap. Zhang Guanyu and the others had all been chatting here for a while now. Among them, First Elder, who was fonder of delving into the formation, had been asking since 10 o'clock at night, aren't we going to set up Heaven-Earth formation tonight? Why hasn't he come out yet? Young master, why don't you go in and urge him? At 30 past 10 o'clock, he said, he hasn't come out yet. Oops, I am anxious. At 40 past 10 o'clock, he added, are young master's wife and child still awake? Aren't they staying overnight? Young master, young lady, I suggest you go over there and try to convince them that staying up all night is bad for their skin. When it turned 12 o'clock, everyone else was looking at each other, wondering why Zhang Han hadn't shown up. As they were wondering, Zhang Han's figure flew out of the window on the 3rd floor. "He's finally out." First Elder, who was hot-tempered, greeted him with a move, taking the initiative to ask, "How do you want to set up the formation? Can I help you with anything?" "No need." Zhang Han shook his head slightly and swept a glance at the crowd, feeling somewhat strange. "Why are there so many people? You're going to set up heaven-earth formation." "Naturally, they've all come over here to take a look. It's a very memorable day." Dong Chen nodded and said, "At the same time, we'll also see if the heaven-earth formation you're talking about is indeed that strong. Son, setting up heaven-earth formation will cost much energy and power, which is still a big project." Rong Jiali stepped forward and said gently, "As for what do you need us to do, just say it. We can do some simple ones and let First Elder do the harder ones." She had come over here mainly because she was worried that Zhang Han would be tired. Setting up the heaven-earth formation was very difficult, and it would take at least several months, and Zhang Han intended to spend several hours setting up heaven-earth formation, making them think that it would be a small one. Moreover, Mount New Moon was not that vast, but as for the higher-grade heaven-earth formation, it would take a long time to set it up, and they were a little curious as to whether Zhang Han could do it or not. If Zhang Han had said that he would get it done in a month or two, they would have all been convinced. But Zhang Han would only need a few hours, which was something unprecedented. "No need, I've got a helper." Zhang Han laughed. "Ah, who is it?" Rong Jiali was slightly stunned. "Here it is." Zhang Han revealed a mysterious smile and pointed at the Thunder Yang tree. "Thunder Yang tree?" Zhang Guanyu raised his eyebrows. "How does it help you?" Although Thunder Yang tree is at the top echelon among the divine objects, speaking of its function, it can enhance the territory, making the aura grow stronger and stronger. Moreover, it can be combined with Thunder Yang wood. Other than these, there's nothing more, right? "Yes." Dong Chen nodded slightly. "It's just a divine object and doesn't have much ability. Even if you have Thunder Yang flower and Thunder Yang grass, which can be used as a formation without the other two things, you can't do anything at all. The treasures of the Thunder Yang system are in line with the 5 elements of Yin and Yang. If they are gathered together, it is rumored that there will be earth-shattering changes, but I haven't heard of anyone gathering them together. After they are gathered together, they probably can all form their own heaven-earth formation. As for the kind of transcendent world that young master said, it definitely can be achieved, but right now, it seems like it's not enough." First Elder turned his head and looked at the Thunder Yang tree twice. "I've only heard of the Thunder Yang tree, it's the first time I've seen it, and I don't know what specific functions it has." In the middle of the conversation, everyone else also took a few looks at the Thunder Yang tree. They felt that it was lofty and yet didn't seem to be that powerful. Upon seeing their expressions, Zhang Han understood what they were thinking about. Thus, he smiled faintly and said, "Speaking of the records that you have seen, I guess the Thunder Yang tree the recorder saw in person is only about 100 years old. Thunder Yang tree is a 5th grade top treasure and goes through a transformation every 500 years. After each transformation, it will improve. When it turns 1000 years old, it is the most abundant energy. Thunder Yang wood is also very unorthodox. When it is 1500 years old, it starts to generate origin power and has the ability to transform one side of the world. And this Thunder Yang tree in front of you, so far, is almost 2000 years old. Buzz. A 2000-year-old Thunder Yang tree? Isn't this an antique?" The crowd present was somewhat dumbfounded. They didn't expect that the lifelike Thunder Yang tree in front of them would be 2000 years old. Zhang Han said, "I'm going to get it started. You guys can go rest or watch from nearby." After Zhang Guanyu and the others nodded, he moved his body and rose into the air above the Thunder Yang tree, slowly closing his eyes and communicating with it with his soul sense. Boom! A dull sound seemed to have rung out of the Thunder Yang tree, and the entire tree trembled, slightly emitting a crystal blue light. At the same time, the Thunder Yang flower and Thunder Yang grass beside it also began to glow, transmitting energy that belonged uniquely to them to the Thunder Yang tree. The third transformation power. Begin. Zhang Han moved his thoughts, and the tree roots that spread throughout the mountain began to expand wildly. This time, the tree roots didn't expand excessively, fusing a small mountain on the north side and expanding its area by a third, but the biggest change happened inside the mountain, where the Thunder Yang tree's roots were like a giant net, emitting a glittering light. At the same time, the veins of crystal stones in the mountain, Thunder Yang flower, and Thunder Yang grass all emerged with a power that lingered on the Thunder Yang tree. At that moment, Dong Chen and the others felt as if everything on this Mount New Moon had possessed a mind of its own, all of which seemed to be worshipping the Thunder Yang tree, or Zhang Han above it. The energy surged for half an hour and gradually calmed down. Thus, Zhang Han floated on the Thunder Yang tree for a full 3 hours without moving, as if he was sleeping. This scene made First Elder and the others confused. What is this? Could it be that he is being prepared, organizing his aura and that kind of momentum? After all, he needs to be at his best while setting up a formation, I guess. I think so. But if he's acting like that, how come he will be in time to set up a formation? After all, dawn is coming soon. Let's just stand by and watch. Maybe he can scare us again. Eventually, Dong Chen shook his head slightly and sighed. We simply can't use common sense to judge this kid. As expected, Dong Chen was experienced. Buzz. As soon as he just finished his words, within 3 minutes, there was a sudden burst of fluctuation from Zhang Han's side. They could only see that the low sky seemed to be raining meteors, which were various pieces of crystal stones. Most of them were lower-grade crystals. People on the scene could see that the lower-grade crystals all went deep into the ground and played supplementary roles. Besides, there were pieces of formation stones, holy objects, medium-grade crystals, few 5th-grade formation flags, and various divine weapons that served as the eyes of the formation. Everything flew towards the surroundings of Mount New Moon, and the scene was the same as that one when the fireworks bloomed. Zhang Guangyu and the others were in a daze as they saw the scene and thought, it is not a set-up formation at all. First Elder got a stiff and incredulous look on his face, but he also knew in his heart that although Zhang Han came from a family where there were many martial artists, he surely couldn't waste resources like this. If Zhang Han couldn't, that meant he was setting up a formation seriously. But, something was not right. First Elder was in a somewhat conflicted state of mind at this point. Under everyone's gaze, the light slowly faded and Mount New Moon gradually regained its peacefulness. Was it over? The crowd looked at each other, feeling nothing. First Elder asked somewhat hesitantly, is this a failure? Dong Chen shook his head slightly, indicating that he didn't know and wondering why First Elder would turn to him when it came to the formation. Who said it failed? A calm voice came from above all of a sudden. Everyone looked up, only to see Zhang Han's figure descending fast. If no, then this. First Elder looked puzzled. Zhang Han shook his head slightly and suddenly looked towards the Thunder Yang tree, cupping his right hand and whispering softly, Star and 5 elements formation. Take shape. Buzz, buzz, buzz. For a moment, earth-shattering energy surged out all around Mount New Moon. Chapter 783, Formation completed. Dong Chen's and his companions' expressions gradually froze. There. The power of heaven and earth? Why is there so much power of heaven and earth? We can capture a small amount of it, but why is it so much? First Elder had a better knowledge of it and knew very well it was terrifying. The power of heaven and earth was different from spiritual chi. In the secular world, the mysterious main continent, there was not much spiritual chi because it was on the verge of exhaustion, but the space between heaven and earth was permeated with another kind of energy, which was the power of heaven and earth. It was very hard to draw this power. But things that could draw the power of heaven and earth were all high-end secret techniques. He had seen that the secret method someone put to use could do it, even including setting up the heaven-earth formation, but there. The power of heaven and earth that surrounded the entire Mount New Moon seemed to have the power that could topple the mountains and overturn the seas. This was so frightening. It was fair to say that Mount New Moon was over 20 times smaller than Mount Heavenly Nights, but now the power of the heaven and earth surrounding Mount New Moon was over 100 times more than that of Mount Heavenly Nights. I've never seen such a situation, but how? How did it happen? First Elder was a little dumbfounded. Clatter. In the gaze of everyone, the power of heaven and earth became denser and denser, as if it had become a vast starry sky, dotted with the light of stars. When they looked carefully, it seemed to have turned into a sea of stars with lots of galaxies. Some were round, some were square, and some were connected within by threads, as if they were formations, and the energy in them surged more and more strongly. Oh! How far does the power of heaven and earth it is absorbing come from? When he used his soul sense to feel it, Dong Chen couldn't help but gasp, for he sensed that the power of heaven and earth was trembling in a radius of 5 kilometers, rushing toward Mount New Moon in the form of a storm. Hearing Dong Chen's words, Chen Chenking, First Elder, Zhang Wenyu, Gaik Kong, and the others all used their soul senses to detect. They gasped one after another. All the eyes around fell on Zhang Han instantly. How far? Their eyes were full of curiosity. Seeing this, Zhang Han coughed lightly and satisfied their curiosity by saying, more than 50 kilometers. What? A radius of 50 kilometers? Is this still the heaven-earth formation? This design is so ferocious, isn't it? This is the first time I have seen such a heaven-earth formation. My God! Wang Zanping and his companions were even more stunned. They were all dizzy, feeling that this kind of formation was beyond their imagination. With his face muscles trembling, First Elder added, not only you but also I am stunned. Don't be stunned, this is just the beginning. Zhang Han shook his head with a smile and extended his palm forward to hit the air. Gather. Woo. Everyone seemed to have heard a howling sound. This was the power of heaven and earth, which was madly moving forward. With this action, Zhang Hai said calmly, this is not the power of heaven and earth. To be more exact, there was only 1/3 of the power of heaven and earth, and more of it was the power of stars. In your senses, the power of stars is similar to the power of heaven and earth, but specifically speaking, there are differences between them. The power of heaven and earth is the energy possessed by one part of heaven and earth, while the power of stars is the energy that the vast starry sky gives to one part of heaven and earth. What are the differences between the power of heaven and earth and the power of stars? First Elder asked hurriedly. Almost everyone was looking at Zhang Han with anticipation, including Dong Chen. The power of stars and the power of heaven and earth seemed to be something quite high-end. The power of heaven and earth is of great momentum, but one has to have a certain level of cultivation to mobilize a wide range of the power of heaven and earth. It is a bonus to attacks, making them more powerful and fiercer. As for the power of stars, it is a secret pure energy using method. If such an attack was launched, the opponent will have to defend himself with multiple times the energy. It also has other abilities, but I won't say them because they are complicated. Even if I tell you, you won't understand. Zhang Han's reply made these people a little speechless. What an expression like even if I tell you, you won't understand. It was so insulting. Those elders present, such as Dong Chen, First Elder, Wang Zanping, and others felt that they were a little ashamed indeed. When Zhang Han had sensed the energy of heaven and earth almost enough, he said before the others asked him, therefore, this formation is called Star and Five Elements formation. The attributes of the five elements are a series of attribute energies and have many types. If all the five elements have a balance, various abilities will increase exponentially, and power, defense, and other things all can be possessed. The five elements belong to a very high-end attribute, and the difficulty is to maintain the balance, so I don't suggest you study the big formations made of the five elements. Then when can begin our study? First Elder had a wish to try and looked at Zhang Han with anticipation. You have to fully understand the 10,000 formation image at least. When you have understood these basic things, then you can touch the more advanced. The 10,000 formation image. Wang Zanping's and his companions' faces had almost turned dark. Alas, I don't think I have help in this life. Wang Zanhong sighed. You have a chance. Zhang Han smiled. Then, as his eyes glistened brightly, his right hand turned into a first from a palm. Forbid. Suddenly, a mark flickered in the air, and then many people felt a strong pressure. What is this? First Elder asked curiously. No airspace. Zhang Han looked at the sky and said, I want no one to fly in Mount New Moon. As Zhang Han talked, many kinds of energies moved forward to form a huge forbid Chinese character, and the entire space seemed to tremble. Then, the character disappeared, but the energy storm had just begun, and the formation had just taken shape. I want no one to enter this land by mistake. A huge illusion formation took shape on the periphery. I want the coming enemy to shed blood here. A killing formation that made people's scalp numb appeared and then disappeared. I want the defense here not to be broken by those who haven't reached the elixir stage. The final energy converged into a defensive formation. Seeing it, First Elder trembled and felt that it was so strong that it seemed to be more powerful than the double dragon formation of the Heavenly Knights sect. No airspace was a combination of a magic formation and the Heaven-Earth formation. The formation controlled by Zhang Han and fortified by 20 kinds of magic artifacts would probably be able to even prevent those at the Heaven Peak stage from flying here. The illusion formation, the killing formation, and the defense formation had improved the comprehensive defense of Mount New Moon. With all this done, his job was over. His eyes showed that he was a little tired. All this seemed simple, but it was quite difficult to have done it, and this was the best Zhang Han could do now. He looked at the third floor of the castle, where there were his beloved ones. This is Meng Meng's Xanadu, my and Xian's home. Zhang Han mumbled this in his mind. When he had Xian and Meng Meng, he felt that no matter what he did, he was motivated, and what he did was meaningful and worth doing. The words husband and father changed Zhang Han dramatically. To be honest, if it were not for Xian and Meng Meng, Zhang Han, who had returned from cultivation, would turn the world upside down. But now, he just wanted to be a guard and a practitioner of the third generation of a martial arts family and live a quiet life. But it was a little difficult to be a practitioner of the third generation of a martial arts family. The Wind Snow School's strength was many times stronger than that of Heavenly Knights sect. Go back. Zhang Han was going to go back to practice the Heavenly Demon Skin. With Mount New Moon under my control, our safety is guaranteed, but Meng Meng is about to start school. Can I let her stay in Mount New Moon all the time? This is unrealistic, but letting her go to school is dangerous. Zhang Han intended to make the best 5th stage spirit treasure for his wife and daughter, but this was not an absolutely safe choice. The only way was to master the Heavenly Demon Skin and get supernatural powers. Zhang Han was sure that Athanasian Demon Gong had 8 supernatural powers, but he didn't know what they were. He thought about going back to practice, but he met First Elder, Wang Zanping, and their companions who wanted to ask about the knowledge of formations. Zhang Han had a wry smile and said first, the star and 5 elements formation evolved the mutual promotion and restraint relationship between the 5 elements, which would become a mysterious formation with many eyes, but the most important thing is the Thunder Yang treasure that mainly consists of the Thunder Yang trees. The Thunder Yang belongs to the 5 elements and was the perfect match for the star and 5 elements formation. When I find the other 2 Thunder Yang treasures and become the land of Thunder Yang, the formations here will be very powerful and become one with an unpredictable nature, and the place will not only be protected by a few simple formations. I said that your understanding of the 5 elements is poor. You'd better not touch the formations on the level of the Heaven-Earth formation too early, and it's better for you to study the 100 formation image. When you have mastered it, I will set up the 1000 formation image for you. Father, mother, if you don't have anything to tell me, I'm going back. Go. Wrong. Jiali nudged Zhang Wenyu, who wanted to ask questions, and bade Zhang Han a gentle goodbye. Okay. Zhang Han smiled and moved, turning into a streamer and flying back to the 3rd floor. These people were left behind to look at each other. This time I did broaden my horizon. Young Lord is so powerful, and I admire him. Alas, I feel so much pressure. I'm going back to practice. The 3 big heads shook their heads again and again, and then ran their spiritual force, hoping to fly back to their villa. But, the 3 of them suddenly realized that they had only jumped to a height of 2 meters, and then they couldn't go higher. Can't fly high? They remembered the no airspace restriction that was installed just now. Why could young Lord fly? The 3 of them were a little confused. Nonsense, the formation was set up by him, how could he not fly? First Elder looked at them with an expression he wore when he looked at idiots. Go, go. The 3 big heads realized it but were a little ashamed. After giving their greetings, they ran fast toward the villa where they lived. The others saw it and shook their heads with a smile. It only took a few hours to have set up the heaven-earth formation, but it is beyond my imagination. I am convinced. Let me go and look at the 100 formation image, which shouldn't be difficult for me. Let me take a look, go back to rest, and get ready to look at the appearance of the 1000 formation image. First Elder said. Wang Zanping and his companions volunteered to lead the way. Let's go. Disperse, Dong Chen said, and then turned around to look at his villa on the side, motionless. Only after 3 seconds did he have a little embarrassed expression. Fu K, I can't fly. Ahem. He could only cough and quickly left. The others, who also got the experience, turned around and walked away. Only First Elder went to the dense forest on the back mountain with them. Before they got close, they heard Dai's snoring. These little creatures are sleeping soundly. First Elder smiled and said, I heard that the 100 formation image has been set up for a few months. Haven't you mastered it? Hearing this question, Wang Zanping, Wang Zanhong, Wang Ming, and the other 4 people were a little ashamed. It's shameful to say this, Wang Zanping sighed lightly. I have only figured out more than 30 formations. 28 from me. 10 from me. Wang Ming also raised his hand. They knew more than 100 formations, but the formations in the 100 formation image belonged to the basic formations. Relatively speaking, these formations they knew were just equal to 1 formation in the 100 formation image. Hearing this, First Elder shook his head slightly. The basics of the 100 formation image are so simple, but you still haven't mastered them. It seems that your formation foundation is a little weak. I will be living here, so if you have any questions, you can ask me at any time. Okay, thank you, First Elder. Wang Zanping and his companions answered excitedly, but they had a question. How many formations in the 100 formation image had First Elder figured out? A few minutes later, the group of people arrived at their positions. First Elder took a look, but his expression gradually became solemn, and then he stood on the edge. They stood there without moving an inch for a whole night. Chapter 784, Xian cried. When the first ray of sunlight lit up the whole earth, Wang Zanping couldn't help asking in a whisper, how many formations have you figured out, First Elder? You have mastered the 100 formation image, haven't you? Closely after him, Wang Zanhong flattered. It should be like that. He can study the 100 formation image for a few hours at a time, so he is really amazing. I feel that First Elder can start studying the 1000 formation image today. When a man's formation skill is at First Elder's level, we need to look up to him. Wang Ming sighed lightly with emotion. They had just been with First Elder for a short time, but they had learned a lot of knowledge from what he said. Indeed, he knew a lot. More importantly, they could understand what First Elder talked about because it was not so incomprehensible as what Zhang Han said, though his formation skill was not so amazing as Zhang Han's. Besides, The 100 formation image was a formation image at the lowest level in Zhang Han's eyes, so they thought that First Elder was sure to figure it out. When First Elder heard Wang Zanping and his companions asking questions, his expression suddenly froze, showing that he seemed to have come back to reality, and his eyes became clear, but then he remembered their questions. First, the look in his eyes was dazed, then solidified a bit, but finally lost focus. Ahem, how many have you figured out? First Elder suddenly looked at Wang Zanping. It's shameful to say it, after spending so much time, I only figured out 37. How many? First Elder's voice sounded a little strange. 37. What's wrong with that? Is this too little? Wang Zanping asked with a little hesitant expression. What about you? First Elder turned to Wang Zanhong. I only figured out 28. First Elder's eyelids trembled. At this time, these people felt that something seemed wrong. Wang Ming thought about it and asked, how many have you figured out, First Elder? I. This is mainly decided by a person's power of understanding. The look in the depths of his eyes showed that he wanted to avoid this question, but not after a second, he said firmly, not many, more than half, it's late, and go to sleep. First Elder just said this. Before they got the chance to ask questions, he had turned and walked away. More than half. Wang Zanping's mouth trembled a few times, and he finally said, First Elder is amazing because he can even figure out more than half of it with his first try. As they talked, they looked at First Elder's back, seeing that he seemed to have stopped for a moment when Wang Zanping said this and then walked much faster. If he were someone else, he might have given them the feeling that he was fleeing away, but since he was First Elder, his steps looked steady. The fact was like that, but when he returned to the villa with a calm face, his calmness disappeared as soon as he entered his room. He leaned against the door and let out a long breath. What's wrong with me? How come I don't understand more than half of it? I only figured out 36. It is so shameful. Is my formation skill really so low? Why am I not even better than Wang Zanping? Alas! For an instant, First Elder somewhat felt that he had no future. He stood in front of the door, like a little girl suffering from a broken relationship. He said these words painfully. What he didn't know was that every learner could only figure out a few formations with his first try like him. On the second day, all the formations the person understood might be more than 60, and on the third day, the number might be 80 or 90. Since he had a good foundation, Zhang Han estimated that he could fully understand the 100 formation image in 10 days or so. But First Elder didn't know about it now. It was just 6 o'clock at this time, and Zhang Han, covered in sweat, stood up from the bedroom next door and walked toward the bathroom. Woo! It's a long way to go to gain the undead body. The pain of cultivating the heavenly demon skin is probably the most severe one in history. It is torture. I will try to finish the cultivation of my legs tonight. Zhang Han was taking a quick shower as he muttered to himself. What could make Zhang Han feel unbearable was truly not ordinary. Success is not accidental. If you want to be stronger than others, you have to endure more pain and work harder. Of course, it is important to have luck. Surely, the exceedingly amazing things like 10 inches Danshan, Soul Sense C, and Sound of Thunder couldn't be obtained merely with hard work. After taking a shower, Zhang Han walked back to the bedroom slowly and quietly, but he opened the door to find that Xian was awake. Husband. She seemed to be depressed, her eyes were red, and the look deep in her eyes showed that she felt sorry. Seeing Zhang Han come in, she pursed her lips, ready to cry. Oh, what's wrong, honey? Zhang Han was startled. He quickly walked over, bent down, hugged her, put her head to his neck, and stroked her gently. Don't cry, what happened? Tell your husband. As soon as Xian opened her mouth, her tears quickly fell and wetted Zhang Han's neck in just a few seconds. Don't cry, be a good girl. If you feel sad about anything, just tell your husband. Is it that you are upset because I didn't sleep on the bed last night? Then I will stay with you every night in the future, okay? Zhang Han coaxed her softly, but she didn't get better. It is said that women were made of water, and it was true. Xian cried for more than 3 minutes before saying in a sad tone, I heard it. Someone speaks ill of you? Zhang Han frowned. Normally, no one would gossip about her. As a daughter-in-law, she did an excellent job, and his parents were very satisfied. And it was even less likely for his father and mother-in-law to say anything about her because she was their daughter. Then, as the mistress of Mount New Moon, she was kind to others, so who would say she was not good? If anyone was like that, Zhang Han dared to simply beat him to death. But it was not what he thought. Choking with sobs, Xian said sadly, I heard your voice, honey. Is it very painful? Don't suffer so much, okay? Stop practicing. Ah? Zhang Han's expression stiffened. It turns out she heard my voice when I was in practice. The cry of pain? I didn't cry in pain in the whole process, but it should be the situation that I cried in pain instinctively but unconsciously when I made quick efforts nearly at the end of the practice. But it happens that Xian heard it. It should be the situation that when she went to the washroom last night, she found I was not in the room. Because only at that time did he have a little fuzzy mind, so he didn't notice what happened outside. Seeing her sad look, Zhang Han knew that she did feel sorry for him, but he felt helpless. Strength was the fundamental factor in shooting trouble. If he wanted his family to have a carefree life, getting strong was a must. Well, don't cry. Zhang Han was moved. While gently patting Xian's arm, he said softly, I'm just practicing a difficult skill, and I experienced this today only when the practice was nearly over. Don't worry, and it will end soon. By then, I can hug you to sleep again, and when Snow School's trouble will have been shot, right? Just these few days. After being coaxed for a few more minutes, Xian had a better mood. She hugged Zhang Han and did not let him go. When Zhang Han went to bed, the two of them whispered to each other in their ears. Fortunately, Zhang Han was not an insensitive man, and he made Xian chuckle in just more than 10 minutes. In the end, Zhang Han made an explanation, telling her the pain of doing the practice, but the pain in his words was much less than the real one, so she was more or less relieved. He wanted to take a nap, but Meng woke up in just a few minutes after he coaxed Xian. She sat up and pouted, saying, Daddy, Mommy, I had a dream. Ha ha. Seeing his cute girl's look, Zhang Han used his left hand to scratch the tip of her nose and finally put her in his arms. He asked with a smile, what is your dream about? I dreamed that we went to ride on that very very tall Ferris wheel, and Big Hi, Little Hi, and Tiny Tot were all on it. Oh, it is like that. Thinking this was funny, Zhang Han said, then let's go to Ocean Park today, bring Big Hi, Little Hi, and Tiny Tot. Meng was a little stunned. My beautiful dream will come true. Okay. Meng danced for joy in Zhang Han's arms and said, Daddy, you are the nicest. Daddy, you are super nice. Mew ah, puff. Xian couldn't help laughing twice when she saw this, but then she put on a straight face. You just want to kiss your daddy but don't kiss your mommy. Mommy, kiss. Meng moved her pink little lips to Xian and kissed her several times on the cheek. So, today's schedule was made. While he was cooking breakfast, Zhang Han called Zhao Feng, and Zhao Feng then called Luo Chengwen. As a result, a group of 5 cars came to the peak paradise of Ocean Park at 9 o'clock in the morning. With powerful high trio present, this was the amusement park of their family, and they could play whatever they wanted. Since they didn't need to queue up, they had a much faster speed. At about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they had returned to Mount New Moon. At this time, First Elder was already in the back mountain, standing in front of the 100 formation image. He had been studying it and had fast progress, and then he regained a little confidence. Chapter 785, A New Semester. Phew. In the face of the gazes of Wang Zanping and the others, The first elder let out a deep sigh and said slowly with a calm face, "The 100 formation image is worthy of its reputation. I've been studying it for 2 days but only learned 81 formations. The remaining 19 formations are enough for me to study for a while." "Indeed awesome, you got more than 80 formations after only reading it twice. I guess you'll soon finish studying the 100 formation image." Wang Zanping and the others repeatedly shook their heads in astonishment. "Your array skill is so remarkable, we can only look up to you. You've learned more than 80 formations. When you finish the rest, you can go on to study the 1000 formation image." In the face of everyone's praise, the first elder remained composed. At first, he secretly felt a little proud, but then he sighed with emotion. "It is nothing. I'm far inferior to the young lord, for his array skill is beyond compare. He must have already fully understood the 10,000 formation image. But I haven't even finished learning the 100 formation image. Alas, I can't compare myself with such a genius. Originally, I thought that my array skill had reached the peak of perfection. Even in the whole world elite, there were only a few people who could surpass me in array skill. But now, when I meet the young lord, I really feel ashamed of being self-conceited." Ha ha ha. Wang Zanping laughed and said, "No one can compete with Han. Comparing with him always make people feel ashamed of their inferiority, isn't it?" As soon as he said that, First Elder thought about it seriously and nodded in agreement. "You're right, except for him, I have enough confidence to outmatch others. Let's stop talking and continue to study the 100 formation image. Try to learn it thoroughly as soon as possible." First Elder took 2 steps forward and stood in front of the 100 formation image. Before he went to cultivate in seclusion, he said to Wang Zanping, "You should also study it carefully. The power of the 100 formation image is beyond your imagination. It requires a profound understanding of the formation. Although I have comprehended 81 formations, I think that my understanding of it is superficial." "You're right, First Elder." They began the second round of cultivation. Zhang Guangyu and Rong Jiali also began to cultivate. When Zhang Han's family of 3 came back, they finished their cultivation and went to the back mountain together. They, sitting in the pavilion, looked at Meng Meng, Ziyan, and Zuf, who were playing in the pet area, feeling very relaxed. In the pavilion where they were sitting, there were parents of both sides, Ziqiang, Xixiniu, a few people like Zilong, who accompanied them, and Rong Jiaxin. So many people were there. Zhang Wangyu took a sip of the apple juice and asked, "Dear, have you arranged everything in the company?" "Everything has been arranged and come into operation. The opening ceremony will be held more than half a month later. Initially, I didn't want to make it a grand one, but unexpectedly, the enthusiastic official team here has already contacted the media, so, I guess a decent press briefing will be held then," Ziqiang replied with a smile. "More than half a month, it will be quite a long time. Yes, my daughter is going to have her wedding, and everything else can be put aside for a while. Speaking of the wedding, I have a few things to ask." Zhang Wangyu said, smiling, "I don't know what your customs of the wedding are. The date for their wedding has been set. Are we going to hold a splendid wedding? Should it follow the wedding process of Xiangjiang, Singapore, or Shangjing? Well, I want it to be a splendid one, though you and Yan even have a child, my daughter." Somehow, Ziqiang couldn't finish his words. Clutching his forehead with his right hand, he continued, "Well, as a father, I can't keep my grown girl at home. Han, I think you know what I mean." His tone was a little sad, for his daughter would marry into someone else's family. After all, it was different from getting a daughter-in-law as a new family member. That was why Zhang Wangyu had a smile on his face all the time. The happier he was, the more depressed Ziqiang felt. Seeing this, Zhang Han nodded slightly and said sincerely, "Father-in-law and mother-in-law, please trust me. For the rest of her life, I will take good care of her, my wife." "I know." Ziqiang sighed, "Forget it, let's not talk about these things. Han, you are very excellent, so we can rest assured. As for the wedding process, choose one you prefer. Okay, I will give her a great wedding. Zhang Han nodded. The process. Zhang Wangyu hesitated for a moment and said, we can simplify it a little. We martial artists don't have many rules for the wedding. How about this? According to the rules of the North, we will send a parade of cars to pick up Xian and then have some fun casually. After that, we will go back to the hotel with her. As for the details of the banquet and the wedding ceremony, let's discuss them with the host. Maybe we can arrange some great projects. Okay, that's settled then. September 9th. Zhang Han looked at Xian and Meng and murmured in his heart, before that, I'll have to master heavenly dermabrasion. He decided to take immediate action. At 9 o'clock in the evening, Zhang Han got on the bed to coax Meng into sleep. Since the little girl was 5 years old already, she could sleep on her own, but she always liked hearing Zhang Han's stories before sleeping. He told her the story of the King of Dwarves adventure. After Xian and his daughter fell asleep, Zhang Han quietly left the room, went to the bedroom next door, and sat cross-legged on the ground. I'm going to finish the practice of my legs today. These cultivation resources almost have emptied the treasury of Heavenly Knights sect, but they can help me achieve the heavenly dermabrasion, get supernatural power, and advance to the middle stage of innateness. Only then can I have the ability to protect myself and my loved ones. Zhang Han thought for a few minutes and then started to cultivate. His legs began to emit waves of energy. Though he felt a sharp pain as if he were scraping his bones, Zhang Han thought it a relatively easy process. Time passed slowly. At dawn, exhausted, Zhang Han went back to the master bedroom. This time, he had also learned to be smart. He had set up a small magic formation outside the room in advance to isolate his voice because he didn't want to see Xian cry. The practice of legs is over, and the burning pain just doesn't go away. Only after I achieve the heavenly dermabrasion will the pain disappear. Zhang Han pondered for 2 minutes and waved his right hand. Many divine objects appeared and turned into pure energy, which was constantly absorbed by him. His shins, knees, thighs, and even the lower part of the body were covered entirely, which meant that he had succeeded in practicing his legs. He proceeded with unparalleled speed. To be honest, the speed of completing the cultivation of one part of his body every 2 days was exceedingly fast. It was the tension that Zhang Han felt urged him to cultivate at such a fantastic speed. After all, except for the Wind Snow School, the other 7 sects were acting recklessly in desperation. If they couldn't capture the Heavenly Knights sect, they must also be trying to take the Mount New Moon, a place that was easy to get. The next step is to refine my drunk. I'll try my best to achieve the heavenly dermabrasion before the wedding. Zhang Han had made up his mind. He must get the ability to ensure the safety of himself and others. After the next day and the 3rd day, Zhang Han finally finished the cultivation of his drunk. Then, he completed the practice of his arms and neck. The 6th day was Meng's first day of school. Meng was now a student in the middle class of her kindergarten, so she didn't feel that depressed when she had to go back to school. Zhang Han drove his car, taking Xian and Meng to the Saint Kindergarten. In the new semester, the atmosphere of the kindergarten appeared different. Teacher Lu chatted with them for a while, and as always, she praised Meng, who had been lovable and clever. Hearing her praise, Zhang Han felt a touch of sweetness in his heart. See, how excellent our baby girl is. Chapter 786, The Divine List is about to be opened. Papa. Seeing that Zhang Han was ready to leave, Meng ran out of the crowd, ran into Zhang Han's arms, kissed him on the cheek, and then pouted. Papa, come pick me up earlier. Well, I will come in advance after school is over. Zhang Han smiled softly and said to Meng, don't take off the little necklace around your neck, okay? Whether eating or playing games, you have to wear it all the time. Now that there were so many enemies, how could Zhang Han rest assured that Meng would go to school? In the past few days, He had taken time to refine all kinds of defensive spirit treasures, and the most important thing was the space door. Only when he could arrive at any time could he be relieved. Meng had a total of 15 kinds of top-stage 5th-stage spirit treasures. He believed that even if the enemy was at the Heaven Peak stage, it would take them 2 minutes to break through all the defenses. Was it necessary for him to be there in 2 minutes? He would probably pass through the space door in a few seconds. There were even 10 more spirit treasures on Meng's body than Xian's. What did it mean? She was armed to the teeth. It was not that Zhang Han didn't care about Xian, but because Xian didn't have much schedule recently, and they were about to hold the wedding ceremony, the beautiful bride was a little nervous and excited. Moreover, every time Xian went out, there were martial artists accompanying her. Now Leng also had the strength of the Grand Master late stage. Her mother was in the divine realm, but her strength was not strong. Xian needs a more powerful female warrior. Zhang Han thought for a while and felt that there was no suitable candidate for the time being. Leng had good qualifications, but she had eaten a lot of spirit treasures. If she continued to take large quantities of spirit treasures, it would affect her cultivation. As for the others, there was no suitable candidate for the moment. Forget it, this is not in a hurry to succeed. Besides, I can't continue to absorb spirit treasures after I've cultivated the heavenly dermabrasion. I'll have some free time. At that time, I can accompany Xian no matter what she wants to do. See you in the afternoon. Seeing the lovely Meng, Zhang Han touched her little head with a smile, and then the little girl ran to her classmate. During this period, she also looked back and waved her little hands with Zhang Han several times. Seeing this, many people around looked at him. A middle-aged woman in her 50s next to Zhang Han curled her lips. This little girl is so cute. Look at my grandson, he doesn't care about me at all. He's really the same as his father. Zhang Han chuckled and shook his head slightly. Is she your daughter? She looks pretty good. Yes, she's my daughter. She is really good. And my grandson is also very handsome. Young man, if there is a chance, I will let my son and you know each other. He now has a big company. He said that the kindergarten here is full of rich people, and you may have a common topic. Oh. Seeing that the middle-aged woman came to Zhang Han's side and said something, Zhang Han responded casually, but he had never expected that the woman's ambition was great. Your little girl is really good. Well, I'll ask my son to have dinner with you tonight. It's a custom on our side. It's a baby marriage. Zhang Han didn't know what to say. His expression froze all of a sudden. He turned to look at the middle-aged woman, and his eyelids trembled. Finally, he said, if you have the idea of that, let your son come to me. I will have a good and serious chat with him. Wow, young man, you're really good. I got to go. I'll tell him now. By the way, what's your daughter's name? Meng. Okay. The middle-aged woman looked proud. She looked at Zhang Han and then quickly left. She took out her mobile phone and dialed a number. Son, I've contacted a meeting for you. His daughter is so beautiful. The little girl's name is Meng. Zhang Han vaguely heard a ding-dong sound coming from the other side of the phone, followed by a roar. Ha! Zhang Han smiled faintly. Do you want to take advantage of Meng? If you have the guts, come and chat with me. Ha ha ha. At this time, a burst of laughter came from behind Zhang Han. It was Luke's son, who came over. He looked at the back of the middle-aged woman, who was leaving in a hurry, and said with a smile, it's still interesting. I'm a cleaner here, and others regard me as an ordinary person. In fact, sometimes I think it's quite interesting. Many martial artists are about to break away from society. Sometimes, I don't understand the meaning of life. The meaning of life? It is a profound question. It depends on your pursuit. If you pursue strength, there is no end to it. There are always people who are stronger than you. If you pursue love, it just lasts a few decades. A good life is also happiness. To pursue power, starting from scratch, stepping to the peak is also happiness. Perhaps life is the process of pursuing happiness. You can't be greedy. and you should be content with it. I am very happy now, Zhang Han replied with some emotion. Ha, you are a young man who is less than 30 years old. You are emotional about your life with a man who is almost 60 years old. I agree with you very much. You are also amazing. Sometimes, I doubt whether you are in your 20s or not. Perhaps Luxang felt that he had asked a private question, so he waved his hand and continued. Forget about it. Recently, I heard that the Heavenly Knights sect won a great victory. Young Master Zhang Guangyu led a mysterious strong man to sweep through the 8 sects and killed a man who was in Heaven Realm and a lot of strong men in Earth Realm. Although I feel incredible, I feel that it is related to you, because during that time, you also went to the Heavenly Knights sect. The war of the Heavenly Knights sect has lasted for decades, but there has never been such a heaven-defying record until you left. It is a little amazing. There were not many fools in the martial arts world. Luxang made a guess and found that it was not that simple, but he would never have thought that it was Zhang Han who did it. No one would have thought that a martial artist who had just broken through to the divine realm in name could kill martial artist in Heaven Realm. Who would dare to believe it? Hearing Luxang's words, Zhang Han smiled, shook his head, and didn't say anything. Luxang didn't mind. He lowered his voice and said, you should have broken through to the divine realm, right? Yes. Then you should go out for a trip. What do you mean? It's good for you to go out and challenge some divine realm masters, whether in fame or in treasures. Luxang showed a mysterious smile. In his opinion, Zhang Han Yang's name was well known. Now that he had broken through to the divine realm, could he still maintain the legend of invincible Grand Master? Not only him, but everyone in the martial arts world was looking forward to it because Zhang Han Yang had never fought after his breakthrough. In fact, Zhang Han had fought many times, but the world didn't know about it. Even the sects in the worldlet didn't know Zhang Han. Only the senior leaders of the Wind Snow School knew that Zhang Han Yang was a hidden danger because he had a way to break the defense of the Heaven-Earth formation. How about the people of the Wind Snow School? They were still patrolling within dozens of miles of the sect. It could be said that they were apprehending danger in every sound. The ordinary patrolling disciples were in a panic and even began to doubt their lives. Is our Wind Snow School still the top sect? All of this did not improve Zhang Han's reputation. In fact, he did not want to improve his reputation. It was useless. The people of the secular martial arts world were even blurred by the masters from the worldlet. It could be said that there were disciples from various sects who attracted people's attention. Luxang smiled and said, it's good to go out and challenge more people. Oh, I'm not interested. Zhang Han shook his head directly. Don't you want to know the reason? Luxang curled his lips. I heard from the inner staff that the divine list is about to be opened. At that time, the first one would not only be rewarded with 5 kinds of divine grade treasures, but also have the title of Shan Wang. Last time, it was your grandfather, Zhang Xuanhuan. This time, if it is you, your Heavenly Knights sect will be really amazing. Chapter 787, God Realm Cleaner. Immortal King? Zhang Han's expression was as tranquil as the surface of a lake. There's no need. Let alone one immortal king, even if there came 10 of them, he can still kill them effortlessly with his current strength. When he was in a higher realm, his pursuit was no longer the same. Besides, Zhang Han had never cared about whether there were others stronger than him. In fact, Zhang Han was a little tired of these disputes, which he didn't even realize before. But he reckoned that perhaps this was a change after he became a father. However, Luxang didn't know that. The corner of his mouth twitched, then he said, I found that regular notions do not apply to you. That's an immortal king we're talking about, an invincible figure in the divine realm. It also means that one day, he will definitely become a super expert at Heaven Peak stage and take charge of a place. What a great honor that is. Martial artists should always compete for more strength. I think that you lack the spirit to fight for it. Speaking of this, Luxang shook his head again. No. How should I put it? I remember when you made your move, you let your power shine through. as if you were looking down on the world, but in normal days, you are calm, or in other words, serene. It finally dawned on me that when no one messes with you, you're like a gentle cat. But who knows that you are, in fact, a tiger? You flatter me, Master Lu, Zhang Han replied casually. I'm just talking of the fact. Lu Xun shook his head slightly. Nowadays, there are many talented disciples from various sects and forces who have emerged and continuously challenged others. There are several who are the most powerful. For instance, among those you previously suppressed, Yilong Yuan, the devil incarnate, has reached the advanced level of his soul technique and directly broken through to the late stage. Later, he reached the peak after a few days cultivation. So far, 3 cultivators of God Realm peak stage have already died in his hands. Shi Fenwu, the little rock, can move extremely fast and now his speed has overtaken that of the sound by 10 times. His bloodline absorbs energy rapidly. Now, he has reached the God Realm peak stage and is very intimidating. Speed matters the most in the field of martial arts. He has finished off 7 cultivators at the God Realm peak stage. As for Mugs the female demon, by far, she has not made a move yet. As for Heavenly Knight's sect, there is Yun Fei Yang, who is very strong and has made a great name for Heavenly Knight's sect. In addition, Heavenly Knight's sect's recent victory has caused quite a stir. It's admirable that they beat the strong with the weak. Yun Fei Yang can be regarded as the strongest disciple of Heavenly Knight's sect in the younger generation and has the opportunity to compete for the title of Immortal King. In the Wind Snow School, the most famous disciple is still Long Yi, a newly accepted disciple a few years ago. He is now 31 years old and has been at the God Realm peak stage for 2 years. It's said that he could have long broken through to the Earth Realm, but he seems to be practicing some powerful secret method and so has suppressed his cultivation progress, and now he has shown up. He is quite unstoppable. Even Shi Fengwu admits that he is no match for this young man. Our White Moon Pavilion also has a promising candidate. His name is An Ling, and his achievements are amazing. This is an age of great waves, and the Divine Realm is bound to be eventful. The contest for the Immortal King is sure very bloody. Of course, this is not surprising. The strong indeed will step on countless corpses to sit on the throne. God King Jiang did the same thing back then. Well, I think you may listen to me, so I have this chat with you. Since I can see Meng Meng every day and like her very much, I don't want you and your family to be hurt, so I still hope that you can go out to fight and become famous. Then, those lower-ranking people will behave. I am merely at the Grand Master peak. Well, I broke through a few days ago, but in the face of those in the God Realm, I can't stop any at all. After saying that, Lu Xun heaved a lot of sighs. His aptitude was very mediocre. Now that he saw a group of young God Realm experts fighting for the position of Immortal King, his blood was also boiling with excitement. However, he was too old to join the fight, and Lu Go, his granddaughter, made him want to stay away from the fight. In fact, from this point of view, he understood Zhang Han's aloof attitude toward the fight, but he also felt that the young people should be bolder and more aggressive. Yilong Yuan was very arrogant, but there were many people who admired him. His strength was respected, and he was famous all over the world, so few people dared to take the initiative to provoke him. As for Zhang Han, he was still eyeing the Grand Master peak stage. The invincible Grand Master? Well, he had long been forgotten by the mass. As the streets were already packed with God Realm experts, who would care about an invincible Grand Master? However, although Zhang Han's reputation was outshone by many people's brilliance, his title of the Merciless Zhang was still well known, only that there were too few topics on that one to talk about. It was the same with Zhang Wengyu, the former Lord of Battle, who was not yet a Grand Master but was very famous. At this moment, after listening to Lu Xun's words, Zhang Han fell silent. 3 seconds later, he strode to the gate. After taking a few steps, he turned his head, smiled, and said slowly, "Elder Lu, I figure, as it's weekend, if you have time, go to Mount New Moon and find Dong Chen. He is the Grand Elder of Heavenly Knights sect. Upon hearing this, Luxang was stunned. He asked subconsciously, "This is for?" Thump, thump. All of a sudden, he felt his heart beat faster. "Do I feel like I'm going to have a lucky chance? Is it that the Grand Elder of Heavenly Knights sect will personally instruct me?" he surmised. But Zhang Han's answer really surprised him and made him overjoyed. Zhang Han smiled and said, "A Grand Master Cleaner is not so cool when God Realm experts have become common. Why don't we call you God Realm Cleaner? What do you think?" After saying that, Zhang Han shook his head with a smile, turned around, and walked away. Staring at Zhang Han's back, Luxang let out a cry, and his face turned a little red. He was too excited. He even wanted to dance on the spot, but a scold instantly came from the side. "Old Lu, what are you doing? Do you know you're at work? Hurry up and do your job. You don't want the job anymore? Huh?" Luxang turned his head to see that it was his supervisor. This made Luxang's face fall. He wanted to say something, but in the end, he didn't say it. Instead, he lowered his head, turned around, and headed for somewhere else. He hadn't thought about advancing to the God Realm for several years. Recently, he just wanted to accompany Lu go. He never knew that he would have such an opportunity as a cleaner in his granddaughter's school. He didn't even dare to think about it before. While he was laughing in private, Zhang Han got in the car and went to the back of the line. Today, not only the parents of the middle class but the parents and children of the primary class, as well as the freshmen in the kindergarten classes were all present. It was sort of hustle and bustle. There were more than a dozen media reporters in front of the door who were taking photos without a stop. Therefore, Xian did not get out of the car. She waited in the panda car. The passers-by vaguely saw a beautiful woman in the car and found it quite weird. Oh my god, since when can a shabby panda car attract such a beautiful woman with such a good figure? Not only her figure is good, but her face is very pretty. I just spotted her face. Could it be that the world has changed? Two passers-by chatted as they walked inside. All of a sudden, the middle-aged man next to them frowned. He glanced at them, and said reproachfully, "Sirs, please be careful with what you say. Your tongue might get you in trouble. The car worth just tens of thousands of yuan in your eyes, was escorted by a luxury motorcade worth hundreds of millions of yuan last year. Do I need to continue? What?" Hiss. The two men's faces altered, and they ran away in disgrace. A snob always thinks other people are all like him. The middle-aged man muttered. Abruptly, he looked sideways with a smile on his face. "Mr. Zhang." "Yes, Mr. Li." Zhang Han nodded and greeted Li Qi, who liked to flatter others. After saying hello, Li Kai went to the other side. Zhang Han went back to the panda car, started the car, and returned to Mount New Moon with Xian while talking and laughing. The two of them were also very griped by emotion. Last year, when Meng refused to go to kindergarten with all the crying and tantrum, they tried their best and finally made her go. But this year, she was much more willing to go to kindergarten. Time flew, a year had passed so quickly. Back to the mountain, Xian and Rongjiali went off shopping. Rongjiali, who no longer had to wear a bamboo hat, was in a very good mood. Zhang Guangyu and Dong Chen were chatting. They were waiting for Zhang Han's cultivation method. After waiting for so many days, there was no news. They knew that Zhang Han's cultivation was at a critical moment, so they didn't disturb him. First Elder had been studying the 100 formation image recently, and he had already studied 97 images so far. Under his guidance, Wang Zanping and the others had made rapid progress. Accordingly, they were grateful to First Elder. The powerful high trio wandered around Mount New Moon when they had nothing to do. The back mountain was no longer large enough to conceal their power, and the whole mountain top almost became their territory. Thanks to that, Zhang Han had some time to his own. In the practice room on the 4th floor of the castle, he sat cross-legged with a serious look in his eyes. "Today I'm gonna do the last part. hope that I can succeed in the cultivation of my head and scalp on the first try. Chapter 788, Learning the Supernatural Power by Himself. Zhang Han closed his eyes and adjusted his breathing for 30 seconds. The moment he opened his eyes again, all the 35 kinds of divine-grade spirit treasures stored in his space ring had zoomed out. There were also 49 medium-grade crystals. With the energy of the formation stone being turned on, Zhang Han began to refine these divine objects. Waves of strong spiritual qi gradually suffused the room. The spiritual qi became steadily denser, turning into a mist. That was its ultimate form, which even a formation could hardly block out. At this moment, Zhang Han began to run the Athanasia demon gong. Buzz. All of a sudden, Zhang Han's body seemed to have turned into a bottomless pit. A huge amount of spiritual qi, together with the pure energy refined by the divine object, began to flow into his skin. Sizzle. Sounds of burning came. Zhang Han's clothes were instantly burned into ashes by his skin. His whole body was exposed, but he didn't expect it to be scarlet. Countless cracks covered the skin below his head. They crisscrossed with each other. If Zhang Guangyu and the others were here, they would find that Zhang Han's skin was constantly damaged, restored, and healed. The process repeated over and over again. It seemed that there was no end to the cycle. Condense. Refine. Zhang Han made an incantation gesture with his right hand, speeding up the mature for the spiritual qi and energy, and the absorption became even crazier. At this time, he was like a real bottomless pit, swallowing everything around him. His head, which was the only part that was intact, began to be dyed red from his chin, as if it were a kind of mutation. The viruses below his head were eating the good skin on his head. Sizzle. Pain. The almost unbearable pain started spreading from the face. Before that, Zhang Han had already refined his limbs and torso, but at this moment, the pain moved through his whole body. Under the intense agony, he felt sort of suffocated. It's been a long time since I've had such a long-lost feeling, Such a sharp pain, however, made Zhang Han laugh. His eyes were filled with the sharpness that he usually hid. Gritting his teeth, he sped up the refinement process. Sizzle, sizzle. The refining proceeded from his chin to his mouth, nose, eyes, forehead, and top of the head. It only took Zhang Han 3 hours to complete the head and skin draining. Now, Zhang Han looked like a man drenched in blood. To put it in a more vivid way, he seemed to have been roasted. Repeat Athanasia demon gong. After 9 loops, I'll master the supernatural power on my own. Clatter. In Zhang Han's body, the spiritual force surged like a river, and Zhang Han's new meridians began to run in a specific way. Under the operation of the Athanasia demon gong, a stream of amazing energy was formed on Zhang Han's skin, causing his skin to change from blood red to pale silver. The silver color spread from his feet to the other parts of his body. After the cultivation method ran through his body once, the aura on his skin became stronger. Without any pause, he began to run the second loop. Zhang Han's breath became increasingly steadier. He sat very still in the same place as if he was not even breathing. The third loop, the fourth loop, the fifth. After Zhang Han performed the 8th loop of the cultivation method, his aura began to become a little violent. The fiery color covered Zhang Han's skin again, as though he had failed this time. It looked like he was only one step away from success, but failed. The pain on his skin had reached its peak, surpassing everything that he had experienced before. The cracks on his skin could no longer be seen, because all his skin seemed to have disappeared. At this time, there was not much spiritual force left in Zhang Han's body, so he could be said to be physically and mentally exhausted. If it was someone else who was less experienced, he would have panicked and messed up. As a result, his cultivation would decline. If he was not that lucky, he might lose half of his life. The final juncture might seem difficult, but I happen to know a method. Bloody killing. Rumble. Suddenly, Zhang Han's blood boiled, and the secret method made the heavenly demon skin even more turbulent. T would thunder. Crack! Tiny thunderbolts came out of Zhang Han's body and flashed on his skin, making Zhang Han feel itchy. However, it lasted for a very short period. About 90 seconds later, the blood on his skin dissipated, and the skin on his body was almost silver. The heavenly demon skin was attained. Zhang Han slowly opened his eyes, and his skin returned to its original color. It's finally done. The days of suffering had finally come to an end. Zhang Han turned around and walked out of the room. With a leap, he flew straight to the sea. He then landed on a deserted island 10 sea miles away. At this moment, there was a flash of light in Zhang Han's eyes, and his body emitting a formidable aura. He was more than several times stronger than before, as if he could summon the energy of heaven and earth with a wave of his hand. Innateness middle stage. Just like that, he made a breakthrough in his cultivation without any difficulty. The terrifying power brought to him by the 10 inches Danshan had just begun to show. Demon King's pointing. Zhang Han suddenly pointed his right hand forward. Rumble. Zhang Han's right fingers suddenly turned silver. The Athanasian demon gong and the energy of heaven and earth in his right hand produced a horrible attack. Kaboom! A dull blast could be heard, and he felt a small energy fluctuation. Then, there was it. The sea was still calm, the sky was clear, and the breeze was gentle. The waves gently clapped the shore, as though it was saying that Zhang Han's attack was just a show. But how could Zhang Han, who had broken through to the innateness middle stage, make such fancy but useless move? Whoosh! Under the control of Zhang Han's mind, a faint black light appeared out of thin air 100 meters away in front of him, like a silk thread. It flashed over there. Crack! In an instant, the huge stone on the shore broke into pieces, and the seawater seemed to be overturned by something, for there came waves that were dozens of meters high. The pressure was rolling onto the sea. If Dong Chen, first elder, and the others saw this scene, they would be so shocked that their jaws would drop. It had only been a few days, but Zhang Han just broke through again. Was he not subject to regular rules? Even though Zhang Han had broken through to the earth realm, how could he launch a blow very close to their strength? It was a devastating display of power. If anyone else were to obtain this kind of supernatural power, they would probably be in such ecstasy that they couldn't wait to immediately go out and bully others. They would stand under the limelight, looking down on all the other people in the world. But Zhang Han didn't show any joy, and he even frowned. Demon King's pointing. Not bad, but not excellent enough. Zhang Han's eyes were grim, and he thought, Demon King finger, as a supernatural power of the heavenly devil's skin, is very powerful. The speed at which it is cast is quite fast, and the energy pressure is also hidden well. Its casting speed should be faster, with the help of the power of heaven and earth. The fluctuations can easily alert people. Its casting speed is ordinary. If it is combined with the star-picking palm, what will it be like? Combine the two, the power of stars and the power of heaven and earth. That might be worth a try. Zhang Han's interest was piqued, and his eyes gradually lit up. He wasted no time doing what he wanted and ran the Demon King's pointing again. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Up to the 20th time, Zhang Han began to try to add the star-picking palm. This made the island where he was on suffer a lot. On the nearby sea surface, the wind blew, and the clouds surged. The highest wave had reached 100 meters in height. Fortunately, this was the kind of sea wave that appeared in a short period of time. If it went too far, it would become a tsunami. Moreover, it was not a huge thing to cause a large-scale tsunami. Sometimes, when thinking about it, the power of nature was very terrifying. Even to a martial artist, there were many dangerous places out there in nature. It was still early, so Zhang Han decided to give it a try. That's not right, the star-picking palm can't be broken down. The greater the power of the stars is, the greater the power of the blow is. There is almost no energy fluctuation, which means that I'm on the right track. I still need to simplify the Devil King's pointing. The star-picking palm is a high-end secret method. The Demon King's pointing is the supernatural power that I have mastered by cultivating the heavenly devil's skin, and the potential growth of the supernatural power is also greater. To integrate it into the star-picking palm, I need to find a balance point. This balance point. As Zhang Han murmured to himself, he stopped attacking. He slowly closed his eyes and kept replaying this move in his mind. He broke it down, combined again, broke it down, and combined again. He repeated it over and over again. After a whole hour, Zhang Han suddenly opened his eyes. No, I was wrong. I am the one who cultivated the technique. When the heavenly demonic skin was formed, it also brought me a supernatural power that belongs to me. It's not that I'm here to merge the two, but rather to create, change, or perhaps. In an instant, Zhang Han's eyes became incomparably deep, and his right hand suddenly reached forward. He seemed to have entered a state of enlightenment, in which everything became very hazy. Subconsciously, he clenched his right hand and grabbed. Clatter. An invisible wave of energy was formed in front of him. It was a transparent palm, which carried an imperceptible wave of energy. It seemed that it didn't exist, but it was there. Crack, crack, crack. He did not control his power well. Instead, the space around him started to shake and give off a soft, crisp sound. The overlaid tremors caused the surrounding space within dozens of meters to flicker. It was not that anything was wrong with the space. In fact, it was the manifestation of supernatural power. It was not possible for someone at the innateness realm to tear the space apart. This move caused Zhang Han to tremble violently, and the energy in his body was running out quickly. Zhang Han stopped, closed his eyes for 3 seconds, and then reopened his eyes. There was also a trace of shock and joy in his eyes. Never thought I already have a domain? Yes, it's a rudiment domain. In my previous life, I only came up with the domain when I entered the Yuan Ying realm. I didn't expect that I would have it now. Although it's very rudiment, as long as the first level of the Athanasia Demon Gong is completed, the domain will definitely show up. The thing that could surprise Zhang Han was indeed unusual. There were many kinds of ways to refer to the domain. To put it bluntly, it was an excellent assistance to enhance one's combat capability. What made Zhang Han so happy was that his supernatural power had the special property of a domain, which was connected to space. Although it could only lock the enemy up for now, it seemed to be handy enough. Well, next time I meet Shi Fenwu, I can slap him to death at one go. Zhang Han smiled gently, looked at his right hand, and murmured, "This is the first supernatural power I've acquired in this world. I'll name it, forget it, I'll just call it Air-Shattering Hand." Judging from his expression, if Xian were by his side, she could tell that this guy wanted to use Meng's name again. In fact, it was true. A few words crossed Zhang Han's mind. Meng's boxing? Meng's punch? Zhang Han felt that those names were too ridiculous and too casual, so he gave it a formal name related to its attributes. It's almost time. I should pick Meng up from school now. When Zhang Han saw the location of the sun in the sky, he took out his mobile phone and looked at it. It was almost 4 o'clock. He moved quickly and flew to Mount New Moon. If he didn't take off now, he would be late. Chapter 789. A storm is coming. Zhang Han hurried to pick up Meng from school. In the main hall of the main Mount of the Wind Snow School in the Witch-hidden world in the southeast. At this time, many experts gathered including those from the former alliance of the 8 sects, the Caprice Mo sect, the 10 Tiger sect, and so on. In addition, the heads and several high-level officials of the other 7 sects were all present as well. Their sects had been smashed into ruins, but most of these people chose to re-establish the sects. After all, they still had some members. If they went to the secular world and started the recruitment, the number of their disciples would quickly increase. After those disciples reached the God realm, they could go into the ancient mine, where housed many treasures. When the disciples brought some back, they could live on the easy street again. The reason why there were so many sects and forces while there were fewer rogue cultivators was precisely the lack of resources. The sect provided martial artists a platform to pick their own treasures, but the benefit came, after all, from a price one had paid. A month ago, everyone had vowed to take down the Heavenly Knights sect, but now, the situation was so miserable that they couldn't bear to see it. At the sight, they couldn't help but feel a mood of melancholy. How I regret it. The Capricemo sect leader was devastated. He held his forehead and cried in distress. The Grand Elder of Wind Snow School had always had a problem with him. He frowned and demanded, "So you are blaming me?" His words made the Capricemo sect leader speechless. He wanted to say something, but in the end, he just got one sentence out. "I was saying, I regret that I didn't leave a few experts in the sect." As he spoke, he felt quite helpless. He had no choice but to bow his head under the circumstance. The Wind Snow School was really a bad SS. Though there was only the main sect left, they still had a say in everything. Look, Zhang Han didn't care to look at the others at all. However, they also knew that the Wind Snow School was the strongest in the alliance of the 8 sects. Now they had suffered such a great loss. If they wanted to make up for the loss, they had to rely on the Wind Snow School. Even if the rest of the 7 sects joined hands, they were still no match for the Heavenly Knights sect. "Let's put this aside for now," the head of the 10 Tiger sect said in a low voice. "After a month of cooling our heads, I bet everyone has thought it through by far. Upon the invitation of the Grand Elder of Wind Snow School, we gathered here today. We have also figured out one thing. The Heavenly Knights sect has made us lose so much, so we will definitely not let it go. As martial artists who keep their words, we will definitely wipe them out." Good point. That's what our sect wants as well. I agree. Everyone agreed with this statement, but there was also a rational voice of doubt. Our sect has just been established, and now it is still fragile. I think our priority is to deal with the person who can break the heaven-earth formation first. If we don't finish him off, there will be endless troubles in the future. Besides, I heard that the Wind Snow School is not entirely safe. Someone sneaked in before, and a protector was killed. Am I right, First Elder? The person who spoke was an old man, the head of Wuji sect. He was a good-for-nothing who simply gave up the sect's land. He just came here to get a share of the treasures before going solo. As soon as the words were out, the eyes of heads of the 2 sects were filled with shock. Some people looked confused, and 2 men sat there calmly as if they already knew this matter. At this, First Elder was not surprised. His expression was still calm. In an untroubled tone, he said, "I've called you here just to discuss this matter. I know who can break the heaven-earth formation." Hiss. Immediately, many people rose up and fixed their eyes on First Elder. "It's Zhang Han from the secular world." Before they could ask, First Elder continued, "Zhang Han has made his debut since a year ago. He is at the Grand Master Peak, and his incantation and formation are very powerful. His strength is not bad, and his secret method is impressive. He also knows how to break the heaven-earth formation, and he is living on Mount New Moon in Xuanhuan. Then what are we waiting for? Let's go and kill him." The Capricemo sect leader yelled with a murderous look. "Don't rush." First Elder shook his head and said, "Since they dare to go out and attack us, they must have someone backing them up. There are not only Zhang Han on the mountain, but also his father Zhang Guangyu and the Grand Elder of the Heavenly Knights sect. I don't know how many others are there with them. What's more, I'm still clueless on how the heaven-earth formation was cracked. Did Zhang Han do this all by himself, or there were others helping him? I'm afraid that there will be trouble if we Wind Snow School launch a full attack against them. If this is a diversion they created on purpose, I don't want to see they get their way. That's why I called you here, as you don't need to look out for trouble back at home." These words made several heads present feel quite uncomfortable. Damn it, you have nothing to worry about back at home. But after thinking about it, they found that it was true. This is awkward. Don't blame me for being too direct. First Elder said lightly, if you want to fight, you can go destroy Mount New Moon in the secular world and kill Zhang Han Yang and the others, but the situation you are facing is not good. The government has banned reckless fights. You all understand that. If you succeed, I will give each of you 10 divine objects. The only requirement is to kill Zhang Han Yang. Huh? 10 kinds per person? They were immediately intrigued, but then, everyone calmed down to think. Since First Elder was willing to offer such a big reward, the mission they had to carry out was definitely not as simple as they thought. Yes, or no? First Elder's expression was perfectly calm, completely devoid of emotion, as if he already knew their answer. We decide to. Several sect heads looked at each other and eventually nodded in agreement. I warn you in advance that Mount New Moon seems to be protected by a heaven-earth formation. It's guarded by Zhang Guangyu, the Grand Elder of Heavenly Knights sect, and maybe some other people. There are only 5 days to go before Zhang Han Yang's wedding starts. His daughter, Zhang Yuman, is in the middle class of Saint Kindergarten, and his wife, Xian, is a star. First Elder nodded. After telling them these pieces of information, he turned around and left. He had no interest in continuing to entertain these people. In fact, everyone knew that First Elder wanted them to act as the vanguard. The force of the Wind Snow School had to stay back and guard the main sect, so they couldn't take any risks. Also, they couldn't afford to lose more protectors. Moreover, even if they really killed Zhang Han Yang, First Elder might not give each of them 10 kinds of divine objects. The Caprice Mo sect and others were also aware of that, but they reckoned that as they had 12 cultivators at the Heaven Peak stage, and some at the early stage and at the middle stage, as well as a few at the Earth realm, they were, in fact, quite an army. Since we've all agreed, let's go straight to Mount New Moon and flatten it, the head of the 10 Tiger sect said. We're under no pressure at all, isn't it just a big fight in the urban area, with our strength and numbers? The fight won't last for more than 30 seconds, so we may not offend the authorities. I think it's okay. That's settled then, isn't it? In an instant, 2 other people agreed. However, the Caprice Mo sect leader had much more to consider. After deliberating for 5 seconds, he said, I think we'd better wait. First Elder wouldn't have told us the background information for no reason. We can't treat this Mount New Moon war as a child's play. Even the Wind Snow School is afraid of them. So, we also need to make some preparations. Then we'll do it at his wedding. Give him a present. Are you crazy? How many people will go to the Heavenly Knights sect for Zhang Han Yang's wedding? How many businessmen from the secular world will attend the event? How dare you attack him then? Therefore, a fierce discussion took place among this group of people. Those present were either the heads of sects or the high-level officials, so the debate went on for quite a while. As for all this, the Heavenly Knights sect was totally ignorant. Zhang Han, on the other hand, was on his guard against them. He set up the Heaven-Earth formation, refined the defensive spirit treasures, and so on. Maybe it was because of the pending arrival of a formidable enemy. Zhang Han could feel danger, but he also felt a little helpless. In fact, he didn't expect that he was a 3rd generation of a martial art family, and the sect he was left with was still a mess. When Zhang Han picked up Meng from school and went back home, Xian and Rong Jiali, a group of women, also had come home after shopping. They were carrying all kinds of shopping bags, looking very happy. By this time, Xian and her mother-in-law, Rong Jiali, had been very close to each other. Xian would have started calling her mom if it were not for the fact that the wedding had not been hosted yet. In just a few days, the wedding would take place. The 2 families were very looking forward to it and also began to make all kinds of preparations. Chapter 790, On the Eve of the Wedding. Time passed by quickly. In the blink of an eye, it was already the eve of the grand wedding. That day, at noon, many big shots from Hong Kong showed up. Various forces from the grand families in Singapore, Liu Qingfeng, some forces in Shangjing led by Warlord of Chan clan, a few forces in Linhai City led by the Rong clan, Some forces in the northeast led by Gai Xingkong and even some powerful masters backing them in the worldlet, came with them as well. They were there for only one purpose, which was to show their support and goodwill toward Heavenly Knight's sect. For a sect like Heavenly Knight's sect, it was ranked at the top in the worldlet. Although it was subject to perpetual war, its position had never been affected. People from the martial arts world in Xiangjiang were not surprised at all at the arrival of these people. It was because in recent days, everyone had heard about the sensational news. FCK, Zhang Han Yang will be getting married. His wife is Xian, who is very beautiful. His life can't be more successful. He has an overwhelmingly beautiful wife as well as a lovely daughter, which is so enviable. It's a pity that merciless Zhang, who was well known across the world in the beginning, is now obscure. Now, when we mention his name, people in the martial world aren't moved at all. Hey, when we went out back then, they kept complimenting us in various ways, such as Xiangjiang is amazing because there is a merciless Zhang, but now, those divine realm monsters coming from the worldlet are so scary, such as Yun Fei Yang from Heavenly Knight's sect and the two people from Wind Snow School, who turned out to be the unstoppable Long Yi and the newly risen master named Little Rock, Shi Fenwu. As expected, Yi Long Yuan has also become a devil incarnate. I wonder if he will come to challenge Zhang Hanyang before his wedding day. According to his personality, he is likely to do so. You're only talking about the most prominent ones. There are quite a few other talents, who are equally strong. Before, the high-end martial artists in the martial arts world were as weak as stagnant water, but now, oh shit, all the martial artists inside the worldlet are really strong. I have a feeling that something might happen at Zhang Han Yang's wedding tomorrow. Someone said that they saw quite a few powerful masters near Mount New Moon. It seems like Zhang Wengyu is among the masters. It is said that Zhang Wengyu is the young master of Heavenly Knight's sect, SHH. If it turns out that he is Zhang Han Yang's backer, the situation will be a bit scary. They have certainly made a lot of preparations. At this time, only a small number of people in the martial world knew that Zhang Han was Zhang Wengyu's son. The number of people who knew that Zhang Han Yang was Zhang Han were relatively high, while people who knew the actual truth were few and far in between. Of course, the comparison was done against the entire martial world. At the very least, everyone in the Wind Snow School knew who Zhang Hanyang was. At this time, in the large restaurant at Mount New Moon, which was not open to the public, a large group of people including Zhang Han, Xian and their parents were gathered there. It was Friday today. There was an hour to go before Meng Meng came back from her school. The wedding preparations were ongoing. On Mount New Moon, it was business as usual. It seemed that nothing had been prepared. But Xian knew very well that they definitely would have prepared a lot of tricks. A grand wedding? Or a very low-key wedding? Whatever it is, I will be happy. Xian snuggled up to Zhang Han's side, having some crazy thoughts. She was wearing a purple dress today, which made her look really graceful and ladylike. Seeing the happy smile on her face, Ziqian could not help laughing as well, but then his face became serious as he said, Xian, if you have any requests, just bring them up now. Why are you so accommodating toward Zhang Han? The easier it is for him to get you, the less he will cherish you. His words made Xian's expression stiffen slightly. She was silent for 2 seconds before she snorted, so what? You? Ziqian was truly speechless as he sighed incessantly and said, as expected, it's hard to keep a woman at home. His words made the crowd burst out laughing. Zhang Wengyu, in particular, grinned and said, ha ha ha, Xian's father, don't argue with me about this. You have a granddaughter. Even though this is a wedding, they are considered to have been married for a long time, which we are a bit ashamed of. So if you have any ideas and requests, feel free to bring them up. Hey, I don't need to bring up anything. Ziqian sighed lightly. I am also relieved that my daughter is marrying into your family. After all, Zhang Han's excellence is obvious to everyone, and what I value is not how Zhang Han is excellent in the martial world of yours, Instead, it is the kind of attitude he has towards Yan and Meng that I value. Forget it, let's not talk about it. The wedding will be held tomorrow, so we will bring Yan back with us later, and we will wait for you at the Marco Polo Hotel where you can pick up the bride, okay? Other than that, the rest is up to the host. Zhang Wenyu nodded. After that, everyone began to chat with each other. Zhang Han and Xian sat at the side, whispering together. Xian's big beautiful eyes blinked and she stared at Zhang Han as she said, "If I'm not here tonight, will Meng be alright, or should I just stay here?" Xian wanted to stay in the castle. She felt at ease only when the three of them were together. With such an imminent wedding, Xian felt a little nervous and excited as well, but the host had organized a set of itineraries, saying that they had to be separated. Considering the convoy's transportation, distance and time as well as other factors, it was finally decided that Xian and the people from her natal family would stay at the Marco Polo Hotel in the western south island of Xiangjiang. Therefore, Xian made a such proposal. After all, she did not like sleeping alone. Well, Zhang Han was somewhat silent, then he smiled and shook Xian's palm as he said, "We'd better stick to the arrangements. I will coax Meng at night, which should not be too much of a problem. She's quite excited about the task of holding the bridal bouquet tomorrow." Hearing his words, Xian involuntarily smiled, recalling how Meng had muttered words like the bridal bouquet in the big bed last night. It was still relatively rare for a child to attend his or her biological parents' wedding. Humphrey, Xian snorted softly. Meng is so attached to you, she is never that close to me. You two are in the same boat now. When she thought of this, Xian wanted to complain. Sometimes, if she didn't let Meng do anything, Meng, who was very smart, would sit earnestly for a while and then she would go to her father. As a result, the two of them whispered for a long time. In the end, Meng had her way and did whatever she wanted, such as sneakily eating ice cream and snacks. "Hey, I met my daughter somewhat late, didn't I?" Zhang Han laughed and shook his head. "Humphrey. Okay, stop humming, let's go. You should wait for them to pick you up tomorrow." After saying so, Xian pouted and stood up. Zixiniu, Zilong and the others also got up as quickly as they could and prepared to leave. "Then I'll go over first." Xian made a gesture of making a call to Zhang Han, indicating that they should call each other. Thus, a large group of people walked out of the restaurant and got into various cars, which then drove slowly out of Mount New Moon. Zhang Guanyu and the others stood at the entrance of the restaurant, seeing the convoy off. Only after the convoy was out of sight did Dong Chen look at Zhang Han and said lightly, "The day before yesterday, First Elder finished studying the 100 formation image and you went over to him in the middle of the night to set up the 1000 formation image. He's got his hands full. What about us?" The tone of his voice was calm. But Zhang Wenyu, the three elders and the three peak heads who were familiar with him, could tell that he was jealous. What Dong Chen's words meant that Zhang Han had promised to give them the practicing methods. However, it turned out that Zhang Han seemed to have forgotten about his promise, which was not right. In a few days, Zhang Han nodded his head lightly. There were many practicing methods. But Zhang Han did not just give them a random one each. He had chosen practicing methods for these people which, even though it suited them well, were still somewhat flawed, which led him to have to make some changes. Those practicing methods were equivalent to the methods using micro-innovation, which were of superior difficulty. Based on Zhang Han's level of understanding, they would not be able to progress that fast. But the others were not aware of this. Dong Chen narrowed his eyes. "In a few days, you've got a big problem, kid. Should I talk to you some other time?" His attitude indicated his displeasure, and he implied that if Zhang Han continued to beat around the bush, he was going to beat him up. Ahem, anyway, you have to wait until the wedding is over. Zhang Guanyu coughed lightly. "Fine, I'll wait." After Dong Chen said that, he looked at the third elder. The two of them moved, but then nothing happened. Several people around them could not help smirking at the situation. It was clear that both Dong Chen and the third elder had just tried to fly. However, it was a no-fly zone here. Whoosh, whoosh. The two of them shifted their bodies and quickly ran away. They ran in the direction of the area down the mountain. It had not been peaceful recently, and the two of them were responsible for ensuring the safety of the people from the Zhang clan. Although the hotel where the people from the Zhang clan were staying was in the downtown area, they had to take precautions as well. At noon, Zhang Han went to pick up Meng Meng. After Meng Meng came home, she was asking where her mother was. Fortunately, Zhang Han, who was eloquent and talkative, managed to pacify the little girl in a short while. Of course, the best way to pacify Meng Meng was to make her look forward to seeing the bridal bouquet and her mother tomorrow, who would be the most beautiful bride then. As such, Meng Meng was full of expectations, and her other emotions slowly dissipated. That day, the martial arts world in Xuanhuan was very active. Those who had not known about the forthcoming event learned the exact news on the actual day. What did you say? Zhang Hanyang and Xian are getting married? Bullshit. Didn't she have a kid? What? It's true. FCK, I'm gotta go see the fun. If you want to watch the fun, you should at least have an invitation card, right? To have an invitation card, you have to get to know them. To know them, you have to have the strength of a grandmaster, and to have the strength of a grandmaster, you should fking go to sleep. People across the entire martial arts world in Xuanhuan were talking about this matter. The news spread rapidly. Oh, is he having a wedding? Yilong Yuan, who had just fought a battle with the other sects, wiped a strand of blood from his hand and laughed. As for this kind of hilarity, I have to go see it. Other than me, he has also offended many people. The current invincible Grandmaster is a joke. As for the Grandmaster Peak, I can kill him at will. On the other end, Shi Fengwu was informed of the news and his gaze was cold. Then he withdrew the energy feathers he was refining as he said, "Hey, I'll personally go there, but if he's less prepared and falls into my hands, he can then rest in peace." Zhang Hanyang's wedding? Long Yi from Wind Snow School gazed at the south and slowly said, "He is in the mood to have a wedding at this time. Well, he is very powerful. Heavenly Knight sect will be well guarded and it is not the best time to do it tomorrow, but some people will think it's the best time to go watch the fun and kill Zhang Hanyang, if ever there is a chance then." A lot of people were planning to watch the fun, either maliciously or in good faith. This wedding was one of the most highly anticipated events.